Welcome back everyone to another harrowing Regal Tails. This is fucked up. But yeah, let's get back to the game. Her heavy gaze was now fixated solely. Wait, I read this. Please tell me this is some bullshit. Crom and his sentinels continued their pillaging of the Imperial camp. They'd found the Empire's arsenal of ballistae. The Grizzly admired the designs of the war machines before him. Thank the gods we stopped them here today. We'd never have withstood an onslaught like this. He marveled at the ammunition racks. Variants of bolts were stacked neatly, many ordained with chains or nets. He gripped his massive paw around the tip of the ballista's arrowhead, his fingers barely meeting around its impressive circumference. How is it that they have all the best toys? He turned to his men with a crooked-side grin. Seems like we're going to have to test these in the first few cities, shouldn't we? He and the rest of his men began to cackle. He ran his fingertips along the sizable arrowhead. His eyes glimmered with power-hungry lust. He chuckled louder and louder. He looked to his men with a hearty smirk, a smirk that faded as suddenly one of his men's head exploded into a pool of viscera. His Shaskaran sword sliced out of the Forsaken Knight's head before tumbling to the ground. Everyone gawked at the horrendous scene, speechless. The dead silence quickly roared into commotion as the surrounding men cried out in fear. Crom and his men snapped their attention to where the sword had come from. A terrible sight greeted them. What happened? A massive tree, uprooted and scorching with flame, had been flung into the air and was headed straight towards them. It collided with several knights, but its momentum dragged it further. There was no hope to dodge around it in this narrow space. Crom's only chance was to outrun it. He hesitated a moment, overcome with dread at the ungodly sight of crackling wood headed for his flesh. Snapping from his fascination, he stumbled back on his feet and dashed away from it. His men were so quick, becoming bound in the flame, touched branches or buried beneath the trunk. The burning tree was hot on the Grizzly's tail. There was no time to dash to the side now, so he just scampered as fast as he could. He leaped into a tent, tearing his way through the other side as the tree slowed to a rest, embers igniting the tent. Crom gasped for air at the bitter snare of a tree. His rage shifted to despair as the tree was torn in two, exposing the silhouette of a lioness bathed in flame. Crom! Before the petrified Grizzly had a chance to react, a garish streak of metal and blood torn through his chest piece. A flurry of swipes bombarded the general's armor and flesh, clumps of fur and blood littering to the ground beneath them. Crom couldn't escape the lioness' wrath. Oh yeah, she better she better rip him in half. Like, literally, just fucking dig into his chest cavity and rip his shit out, you know? Naja hurled herself back and swung her leg into Crom's ribs. A haunting harmony of cracking bone and steel erupted from the impact, sending the bear soaring across the encampment. Crom's battered body ricochets across the battlefield. He snares his claws in the dirt to anchor himself, but wasn't given a single moment for even catching his breath. The lioness would not wait for blood. So it actually happened. One of the Emperor's men must have been really, really itchy to fight. Naja, without remorse, swung a devastating uppercut to the Grizzly's jaw. Her raw strength projected the bear off his feet, yet Naja was not done. With trained precision, she grasped his ankle mid-air and flung him over her head like a cub, slamming him face first into the mud. Naya's vision faded, replaced by a haze of red. She lost herself to the frenzy and relish in it. She had lost everything. All of it had been taken away by the one she'd pledged herself to, with shallow promises of grandeur to keep her going. She had been blinded by glory, by honor and duty. They were used and swiftly discarded once they had lived their usefulness. They'd stolen everything from her. Naja cursed the very existence of the Highborn. She would rampage and slaughter each and every one of them. It would start with the general. She better be. I want to see a slaughter against this dude, bro. We're now torn with a war bond, you know? You know, bro, this shit's gonna get whack. She lifted Crom above her head, bringing him down over her knee, his back meeting her with a crack. An agonized gasp burst from Crom. The air had been driven from his lungs. A new blistering pain ran up and down his spine. He grunted as Naja leant down and sank her claws into his face. She hooked her talons deep into his flesh, gripping tightly into his muscle before swinging him behind her and tossing him afar. Crom fell against a tree, growling in pain and fury. He tried to find any means to defend himself but couldn't. She'd broken him. Naja could see the anguish residing over the grizzly. There was desperation in his face. He was afraid of her. He always was, even from the start of this series. Good, or visual novel to be exact. She wanted him to be afraid, but more importantly, she wanted this to hurt. Oh, we're gonna use a battle axe, bro. I want him to literally a sword is like, oh, I'm gonna die by sword. But the battle axe, bro, that's big. Yup, this is the shot right here, Sleepy. This is the shot right here. She lurched down to an imperiled corpse and unholstered the axe from the knight's possession. It gleamed without scratch on it, let alone stained with a drop of blood. She could feel it thirsting for its first kill. She would happily sate it. Crom ripped through the bark of a tree with his claws. He hugged himself to it while his trembling legs left him staggered. The blazing fires that ensued around him deafened his senses. His assailant left him battered and confused. The roars of the burning forest, however, were swiftly cut out by a brief whistle in the wind. I don't know what word is that. Crom collapsed, writhing in agony on the ground. A pulse-pounding sensation of burning pins and needles ripped across the right side of his body with a searing line near his shoulder. He writhed in agony across the ashen dirt, spewing a ghastly streak of foaming red ichor. Suspended over her head was a gleaming axe with a pinned severed arm. It fidgeted unnaturally as life drained out from it. Stunned in disbelief, the grizzly wallowed in suffering while clutching at the air where his arm should be. He refused to admit the chunk of arm before him was his. Crom's paw became drenched in blood as it coursed freely between his digits. Naja stood above him, enjoying every minute of his suffering. Her malicious gaze crawled away from him, now admiring the blood-stained axe embedded in the tree, the arm clinging to it, dangling. She could have ended it right there, but her rage, that sheer unsettling rage of hers, seduced her to do more. She wanted more. Yeah, I get that. She ripped the dangling arm clean from the axe. Her talons sank into the warm flesh, dragging the bear's claw toward the general's face. A vile glare poured from her eyes as she stared into his, threatening to drown him in her hatred. A flash of barbarism swallowed Crom's vision in a haze of blood. Naja whipped his arm ferociously across his battered body. Streaks of cuts and bruises covered his body. Clumps of hair ripped free as his own claws mutilated him. Wow, that's humiliation right there. Naja hammered the armored limb across his body again and again. Each walloping thwack. Thwack? I think just thwack. Thwack against the bear was met with a bone-churning cackle. Naja stopped once the arm had become limp and malformed. It was simply a slab of meat and jagged bones now. She slammed the arm against his face, leaving him gasping for air after the volley of pain he endured. Her attention crept elsewhere now, her hollowed eyes fixated solely on the axe. She clasped into its leather grip and snatched it free with one might. The weight of the axe was meant for two hands, but Naja needed only one to wield this precious crimson blemished blade. Wow, she has like 99 strength, huh? She dragged the weapon over the ground as she prowled over her foe. The sound of heavy metal dragging through the dirt grabbed the attention of Crom's bloodshot eyes. He knew death was coming. He feebly tries to crawl away as the lioness loomed over. Naja dragged the blade beside his head. He's gasping. Choking death, rattles fell on deaf ears as the lioness raised the axe. She was lost to the bloodlust, her actions not her own. She was at her very core primal now. Instincts alone guided her arms, the axe coming to strike true into her prey. The screeching sound of metal on torn metal shot through the roaring blaze of the forest fire. The axe was engulfed by blood, fur, organs, and fat. Naja hammered the blade into Crom's gut, the impact creating an ungodly chorus of agonizing cries and squelching flesh. She tried to lift the axe, to deliver another strike, but was met with resistance. The general's armor clung to the axe as though it had become part of him. The axe had remained firmly ensnared in his armored gut. Naja scowled, gripping the axe with both paws. She lifted the axe and crawled with it. She swung it against a tree, cutting the general in half. The raw strength, this is badass, fam. This is, I don't know, this is all good. This is like, all money shot here. It's amazing. My god, she split him in half. The raw strength sent the two halves of the general in a fair distance away. Drenched in viscera, she stood at the base of the tree, her grip held firmly in the axe, now entombed in the tree. She trembled, it growing, shaking her core. The axe was the only thing that left her feeling grounded. Without it, she felt as though she would spiral to the world endlessly. Chrom's body, at least the top half, was sprawled in front of Naja. The proud and dreaded general was now reduced to a torn-up ragdoll of his former self. No soul was housed in the meat sack before her. Naja couldn't help but snarl at the sight of the corpse. An undying vendetta suffocated her mind, but it wouldn't do her any good. She needed to direct those emotions elsewhere. She couldn't afford to think of losses. She couldn't afford to think of her daughter's precious smile. The air suddenly felt heavy. The lioness heaved and gasped, hyperventilating. Damn. Naja felt sick to her stomach now. The pure untamed rage she'd felt had consumed her and piqued her to her limits. Her emotions spiraled out of control, sending her mind into a deep, dark, abysmal world of delusion and heartache. Her vision began to wake as her sanity started to stitch her reality back into her mind. She'd lost her people. She'd lost her baby. She wanted to vomit. It's an appropriate reaction. She clutched her fist to her heart and breathed deeply. Inhaled. Exhaled. She still had work to be done. Yeah, Naja, there's still some bastards to kill. Bastards to put on a fucking cross, man. Just put the pike up their asshole, through the ass, up towards the mouth, you know? We're gonna go Latin style. I don't give a crap about these people. Chrome was the first to wrong her, but he wouldn't be the last to know his mother's scorn. Naja picked herself up and stormed her way back to the encampment. She mentally readied herself for any opposition that would stand in her way. She would kill them all just the same as Chrome. She needed to carry her people's legacy forward. She needed to carry on. She winced out a sharp grunt. Ugh. A tingling pain crept over her. The sword wound in her stomach began to pus over. She'd completely forgotten about it, too lost in her frenzy. She lost track of everything, even up to the moment she ripped the sword out of herself. Nothing in this world frightened her. Nothing in this world frightened her now. Let alone fear of bleeding out. She had more important matters to attend. All things considered, the feeling of pain felt foreign to her now, a feeling she wanted to leave behind. Fuck are these people? A monstrous roar wailed out from the encampment. Naya's eyes darted over to the hideous noise. Her expressions greeted with a look of dread. Damn it! He brought bastard with him as well? She grit her teeth at the mere thought of them. She recognized the silhouettes all too well. The dirge. Before and even during the war, they were the bane of Naya and her people's way of life. Staring off at them from afar litters her mind with spiteful memories to even events similar to this. Naja chokes at the mere memory. Their gruesome roars along flings her mind back to a time worth forgetting. She stood out in the foreground, lost, confused, and only 4 years old. The sound of the wildfire set the night sky ablaze. The roaring flames consumed on onslaughts word of panicking cries. The warm blood of her kin drenched her paws. To this day, the dirge are what haunts her the most, eventually mutating into a seizing grudge. The anger alone snaps her back out from her repressed haze. She leered at them with contempt. For reasons unknown to her, they became Chrome's personal armor guard, acting as his private force. Naja took a deep breath and let the rage consume her once more. She wasn't going to let fear of them stop her either. Not even death could now. She stepped forward. Naja, where do you think you're going? We're not finished here. Naja halted dead in her steps. She was paralyzed with utter disbelief at what she heard. A cold draft swept across her back, snuffing out the light of the world into pure blackness. She whipped her attention to the distant voice. Her grasp on reality shattered in what she beheld. Chrome was alive. Neither his fur nor armor brandished any damage from her ruthless assault. He stood stoically with a heated glare aimed toward her. Where do you think you're going? Naja blinked in bewilderment. How was he still alive? Yup, okay, this just confirms this is just a vision. No one's dead. No one got ambushed, because it makes no fucking sense. Unless literally someone did this hocus pocus betrayal bullshit. Yeah. She staggered back in awe of what she was seeing, all the while losing her hold on reality itself. Her paws felt the dead grass around her turn cold and rough. Her vision expanded to reveal she was back at the fortress. Brom stared her down at the entrance of the war room. The corridors leading out from it began to shrink into the darkness, while the fires from the war room grew larger. Naja hissed at the blinding light. Get back here! The grizzly stood there idly with firm determination in his posture. His demands held strong and confident. How dare he? How dare he speak to her like this? How dare he stand tall and proud in the wake of all the turmoil he'd caused? To demand more when there was nothing left? How dare he give her orders? Her mind snapped to her as her confusion mutated into aggression. She swore he'd drawn his last breath. She would happily do it again to make sure she wanted this to be over. She wanted this to be over. The lioness clenched her fist and charged the bear. She raised her fist high, readying to pummel him again. But her fist never reached him. Yup. Her wrist was ensnared by thick links of chain. This is some hocus pocus bullshit. A mighty force pulled her back by the wrist and away from the general. Snarling like a rabid beast, she bared her fangs and her claws at the whip tearing at it.